Hello and welcome to Neuroshambles, the podcast that aims to shine a light into some of the murkier corners of what it's like to parent neurodivergent kids. I'm Mark Allen, and every episode I'm going to be swapping stories with my guests about some of the frankly ludicrous nonsense we have to deal with on a daily basis. So, if you're anything like me and you're feeling frazzled, overwhelmed and pretty much an outcast from polite society, join me. Hello and welcome to episode 38 of Neuroshambles. I knew you'd be back, Neuroshamblers, and I've been lurking here with open arms to embrace the nonsense with you. Thanks for your lovely comments, and also particularly for anyone who's left a review on the podcast platforms, because that's really helpful to encourage other people to give it a whirl. We've got a cracking show lined up for you, as always. I'm going to be talking to a new guest about a topic of the week that I think is going to resonate with quite a few of you. We've also got some Neurodiversity Champions, tiny epic wins, and of course what the flip moments. So I'm going to stop dithering and we can crack on with it.
Meet the guest.
So this week's guest is someone that I spoke to a while ago when I was honoured to be a guest on her podcast, Conversations with a Send Mum. And as with any parent of neurodivergent kids that I speak to, I very often find that I run out of time rather than running out of things to talk about. So I thought it'd be good to invite her onto Neuroshambles to continue the conversation. Not only is she a podcaster and a parent of a neurodifferent child, she's also a former teacher, a trainer, and a SEND advisor. So I am delighted to be able to welcome aboard Nicole Bateman.
Hello.
How are you doing, Nicole? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and chat with you.
I know. It's just nice to go on someone else's podcast so you don't have the editing to do, isn't it?
Yes, I can literally leave it at the end and it's all over to you.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, you know, the format of Neuroshambles, it's important for us to know a bit more about your setup. So what neurodivergencies are at play in your household?
So I am a late diagnosed ADHDer. I got my diagnosis in December. So
pretty recent then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Less than 6 months ago. And then my son, he's autistic and he has epilepsy. And then my daughter also has seizures, but not diagnosed with anything. So,
okay, well, thank you for introducing your setup. We've got lots to cover, so let's get started.
What's the topic of the week?
So this week's topic is something that I think many parents of neurodivergent kids start out with a lot of preconceptions about before their kids are even born, and that is the subject of hobbies. Because I don't think I'm the only one that had an image in my head of what my child's life was going to look like when they're about 8 or 9. So in my head, they'd be taking part in loads of different hobbies, no doubt excelling in all of them, never arrogant about it, of course, just quietly confident, you know, maybe they'd be gifted in football or ballet or drama or street luge or whatever it was. You know, I envisaged myself taking enormous pride in ferrying them to and from training or practice, or encouraging and nurturing their ability, maybe giving them advice, not in a pushy way, you know, more of like a supportive best mate with suspiciously deep pockets kind of way. And that eventually at some point, you know, you're going to have that sit down chat, that serious chat with them where you have to put your foot down and say, you're going to have to choose one of these hobbies to become world champion at. In my head, you know, that's how I imagine
kids.
it. And then obviously, as you say, we meet our kids and we learn more about them and we realise that not only is that unrealistic, it is frankly insane to have that level of expectation. And I did have, obviously not to the degree that I've just outlined, but I did have some sort of visions of them taking part in lots of different hobbies. I'm not the only one that has envisaged a social calendar full of different hobbies for my kids before I became a parent. Is that something that you sort of had in your head?
Yeah, I think also because I did a lot of activities when I was younger, and that is definitely something that you see society often, you know, you see loads of people saying like, oh, I've got to take my kid to swimming and then to basketball and then football and all of those things. So I think, I think it is like quite a societal aim to be like, let's keep the kids occupied, give them all the opportunities and everything like that. But sometimes that isn't the case in reality, is it?
It's interesting that you say that that's what you used to do, because that's certainly
Yeah.
my experience as well, and I think that is something deep down. I guess we want our kids to have the same experiences that we have, right? Like, because when I was a kid, I did all sorts. I played football and cricket and cubs. I did drama. I was super active, and I think to a degree that shaped my personality.
Yeah.
So it's understandable that we would want our own kids to experience the same thing, and you want them to have that same experience. But I think the crucial part to understand is that they're not going to experience those things in the same way that I did because of their neurotype.
Yeah.
So what we think was fun and sociable back in those days is very likely to be my kid's worst nightmare. I used to love doing drama, right? I do plays. Like, for my kids, if you're doing a play where a director is telling you exactly what to do and how to say things, for a PDA kid,
Yeah,
that is going to trigger them
Yeah.
enormously. It's not their bag.
No.
So you have to recalibrate your expectations of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think it's that, but it's also like sometimes certain things aren't accessible. Like, when, I don't know about you, but I find it tricky to trust people with my children because, especially my son. So I could send my daughter to anything and I'll be like, actually, she'll be okay. People will get her. She fits more into the societal views of kids, etc. But my son, there's barriers there that are put in place so that he can't access certain things, and people don't necessarily understand his brain fully.
Yeah.
And so therefore may see certain behaviors as not engaging or being lazy or, doing different things like that, which, I mean, this is the whole why behind wanting to, become the friendly SEND advisor for the children's activity sector, because you want every child to be able to access anything that they want to do if they do want that. And they can have a choice though, because we don't want to force it on them. But if they want to access chess club or football or something like that, you don't want any barriers that sometimes society puts in place to stop them.
Yeah, and I guess, our kids, they're so multifaceted. The way they present can be so different because they've all got spiky profiles, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard for anyone who's organising a group event to understand what those accommodations are. I think that's a really tricky thing, and it's, to expect them to be able to make reasonable accommodations for such a broad range of neurotypes, or sort of a broad presentation of their neurotypes, is really hard. And we've had good and bad experiences of that. So Jay, because we tried loads of things with Jay, before we knew that he was neurodifferent, we would try him on loads of stuff, just because that's what you do with your first child. It's like, my kid's going to do all kinds of things. Like I said, you have that image of them being, doing all of these things. So we've tried parkour and cubs and drama and gymnastics. We've done them all.
Yeah.
None of them have stuck, just to be clear. And I'll go into various different reasons why later on. But when we did cubs with Jay, that was actually pretty good. They were pretty accommodating. And
That's
I think
good.
partly because one of the organisers had an understanding of neurodivergency through their own family. So that definitely helped. And also because it's largely quite chaotic anyway. and when he wasn't able to cope with the more formal side of things, they just let him sit on the side and read his book.
Yeah.
So that was okay. Then there was gymnastics, which was, they didn't get him at all, because he's very, he's got ADHD, so he needs to get his energy out, which is great. Loves to move. Gymnastics, wonderful. Let's crack on.
Yeah.
However, quite a lot of gymnastics was them standing straight in a row and waiting for each one to do various different things.
Yeah.
And he couldn't, he was fidgeting and he couldn't really cope with it. And they'd be frustrated that he couldn't stay still, because of course he can't.
Yeah. It's a need. That's a key thing that I always like go on about, I suppose, because it's like that kid is seeking movement to help them regulate. So therefore, when we say stay in that line, sit still, or wait, or whatever, we're actually stopping that nervous system regulation. They're then becoming more dysregulated. So we shouldn't be surprised that maybe they might showcase certain fight, flight, freeze, whatever behaviors because their nervous system's dysregulated. So you're like, okay, you're stopping them doing something that they really need to help them by telling them to stay still.
Yeah, and I'd pick him up and he'd be just, I could see immediately, when you walk in from that kind of thing, because that was a drop-off one, which, because it was sort of 2 hours, and you just assume, because again, we didn't know his neurotype at that point, so I'd assume everything would be fine, and then you turn up and you see his face, immediately, it's like, oh God, because it's etched with rage, it's not, he's very much a fight response to that level of dysregulation. And there was one time where they said, right, we need you to do 10 of these things, right? And then they'd move on before he'd had a chance to do it. So he didn't get to finish all 10. And they were like, it doesn't matter, we'll just move on now. It's like, but he had to finish them. And he got so frustrated that they were doing it too quickly. And then he just boiled over. Yeah. And they just didn't know how to deal with that. And I think we sort of, me and Jay discussed it. Went, this isn't for you. Like a lot on paper, it is. But this isn't, because I don't think they understood how to accommodate him. No. And back in those days, I didn't understand how to request those accommodations. Yeah. I do now, and I'd be very different now, and I'd say, look, this is what you need. This is how you can accommodate him. And if you can't do that, that's okay. We'll do something different. But as you're trying out new hobbies, some are going to be able to make those accommodations, and some aren't. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what about your son? Has he managed to find something? So for ages, it's literally this school year. So he's in year 4, so he's 8. And, most of the time, so after school clubs are basically out of the window. Yeah. Because they've been, he's so exhausted. Like after a day at school, he then comes, he goes up to his bed, he holds his rabbit, he needs that downtime, and he's exhausted. Like he's literally so exhausted. Sometimes he falls asleep. And unfortunately, sometimes with the epilepsy, he has that altered brain activity all the time. So it's not just when he has seizures. So it's all the time. And the tiredness, all of those different things can play an impact too. And that can trigger a seizure. Yeah, and then because he's overtired. So we have to make sure that we're not overpacking our schedule like with anything. So therefore doing all of these different things each night of the week wouldn't be good for his epilepsy either. Yeah. Because he'd just get so exhausted. But he does do our church youth group every other Wednesday. So that's achievable, and that's good. It's a safe space for him because he knows it. We go there, on a Sunday as well. I feel comfortable because I know the people who are literally running it, and they know him. I've given them all the things, that's that safe space, which I'm very thankful for. So we've just started that, this year, and that is a drop off. But again, I wouldn't drop off many places. It's I have to trust that they get it, and that trust that he's safe. And then he's actually started tennis, which is that's interesting. Which we stay parents watch. So I feel safe because we're there, and again. It was someone I knew from teenage years that I used to play tennis with. So I trusted him and trust that he gets it. I could have that conversation. So I feel like we've only tried out, we tried out a few others, but those are the ones that stick, where I know that I can trust that he's safe. So for you, it's a trust issue of I need to know that you're comfortable accommodating my child and their needs. So you've been reluctant to do that, from the outset, because your child comes with special operating instructions. Yeah, right? And also if they don't, it's like a vicious cycle of if someone doesn't understand his brain, for example, at some point at school, he goes into freeze mode quite a lot. Yeah, okay. So he'll just stop. He literally can't enter a room if something's changed or different things like that. He literally is there, and if someone
then shouts at him for not following the rules, etc., he'll go into, because he loves following the rules, he's very much a rule follower,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
goes into the, he's then meltdown, he doesn't want to get told off and all of this, and it causes then more stress, and then after those episodes, then he's more likely to have seizures. So that often triggers seizures. So if someone doesn't understand his brain and
Yes.
and his responses, that can then cause more stress, which can then cause seizures.
So
it's
the stakes are so much
Yeah.
higher for him, aren't they? Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just to sort of touch on something you referred to was after school club is not for the kids. It's for the parents, right?
Yeah.
It's so that we don't have to take time off work to go pick them up, or to look after them when they're at home. That's the reason for after school clubs. And we don't really have access to that. Like, we've managed to do it one day a week for Otto in India.
No.
Jay has never really been able to do it.
No.
And again, I think the point is that at the end of the school day, when our neurodivergent kids are experiencing so much throughout the day, they're exhausted and they're just done, right? And you see that when they come back in the door and they unmask and they sometimes rage, or they just, as you say, collapse in bed.
Yeah.
So expecting them to go from school into a whole new social environment, even if it's something fun with a bunch of other kids on a very different energy level, it's asking a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I understand that. But from our perspective, it adds pressure to the parents.
Yeah, it is, and that's why I think after school clubs we literally it hasn't just gone from that. Those transitions, those different people, there's so many mixture of things, isn't there? Especially if your child's been masking all day, then also at this after school club, when I talk to different providers, they can do that Coke bottle explosion at the after school club, because maybe they feel a bit safer there and they don't have to mask as much, but then sometimes that's tricky for to deal with. And then because we might get that at home after school, but then sometimes that happens in an after school club for some kids, and and
that's happened a couple of times with Jay when we tried him with after school club. That wasn't the reason that we didn't do it. We just kind of recognised that it was actually too much for him. And realistically, we could have him here and he could just hang out. Because I work from home, fortunately.
Yes.
So, I'm here. I don't have to, he can be in the next room and that's okay. So that does help.
Yeah.
But again, it is that pressure, right? That because it's not just during school time where we would benefit from them having hobbies. It's half term, summer holidays,
right? Holiday clubs would love to send.
Exactly. When you say holiday, as in like going on holiday and going to a hotel, because there's that as well.
Oh yeah, true.
Anyone else that could just take our children and help them do a hobby and us know that they're enjoying themselves would be amazing. But it's not really feasible for a lot of our kids, I think, and that's the really hard thing in the summer holidays. And I'm going to probably do a whole separate episode about summer holidays because it feels like there's a lot to get off our chest there. But just to touch on it lightly, we have to take that time off work. Like all of my holiday days this year are taken up with me in the holidays, just looking after my kids. It can't be like, right, you love football, so I'm going to book you on a football club and you can go for like a whole week and I'll pick you up. No, I have to take time off work to do that, to be around them. And that, again, takes its toll because that eats into holiday that I can have for my own respite. And it's a tricky one that I think all parents of neurodivergent kids at that level have to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's the thing, especially with a 6-week summer holiday, is just, it's a lot. And even if you work for yourself, etc., and run your businesses, you're like, I know that in the holidays, I have to just work in the evenings because I'm with the kids all day, so I can't really get so much done. So you've got to just adapt. And it would be amazing to just find a space where they fully get our kids, and we could, just for one day, just giving that opportunity if they want to. And that's the thing, for different kids, they may not want to engage in holiday club or anything like that, and it's taking the kids' lead, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that can change as well. That's
Yeah.
not like a permanent state. So, you
No.
know, when Jay was deep in burnout, he did not want to do anything. He couldn't face anything at all. So
No.
even suggesting doing something that we know he would like was met with a very firm, quite aggressive no.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like he's in a slightly better place now, and we're trying to explore other options for doing something. So, like you say, you got to meet them where they're at this time and see and keep testing it.
Yeah.
And Tam is amazing at finding one-off things for them to do, which is really good. Usually in the summer holidays, we'll find these little one-off events for them to be able to do. But because 2/3 of my children, at least 2/3 of my children, are PDA, they crave novelty. Right? Yeah. So the problem is that it's not like they find this thing, go, oh, I like that, I'm going to do it every single day for this whole thing. It's like, no, once they've done it once, it's like, right, okay, I get it. I don't want to do it again. I know what it is. I liked it, but, you know, I'm done now. It's like, so you've got to find all of these things, and there's just not enough to be able to do that. So very often we end up having them at home and
and
you know,
exactly. And that's so true. And to be fair, my two are very different. Like my son, he will hyper focus on something. He has those deep interests and all of that, and he will go for that. My daughter, she loves the novelty as well. She's maybe similar brain to me, potentially. But you know, she, for example, has gone through so many different things. She's only 6, but she, So she's done all the hobbies. Every single one off. Skateboarding. She went back to tennis, but then she wants to go. She's like, then I want to do. You know, she's really good on her bike, so she was like BMX. You know, there's a whole variety of different things, but then it gets to that point. We bought the skateboard, we bought all of the things. She did it for, to be fair, she did it for like maybe about a couple of months. But then she's right, then I'm on to, no, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. And we're like, we've got all your things.
I know, this is the hidden expense of neurodivergent kids, is these hobbies that they try out for like a little bit, and you have to get the kit at the start, and then they just... No, that's done. We're done.
Moving on. I'm bored by that now.
Exactly. It's it's really frustrating.
Yeah. So at least I know with my son, like he is now fully invested in tennis. So he loves it. It's like
you don't need a massive amount of kit for that either.
No, exactly. Maths and tennis. There we go.
Great. A calculator and a tennis racket.
Yeah, sorted.
Yeah, nice. I like it. One of the things I find it hard to get my head around is parents who make their kids do hobbies. Right? Because that is simply not an option for me. I can't just go, you know what, I want you to do this thing. No. You're going to do it. Right? It's something that I had when I was a kid. My parents wanted me to learn the keyboard, so I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I did it because they wanted me to do it. I didn't really learn it, to be honest, but I tried. They realised relatively soon that just wasn't going to stick, and that was okay. But I tried it because they wanted me to do it.
Yeah.
And I get the logic of that. I had a really interesting conversation with my best friend about this recently, because he really wanted his kids to play a musical instrument.
Yeah.
It's something that his parents made him do. He learned the piano from an early age, and he's recently reflected that he's incredibly grateful that they did that, because now he can read music, he can play music, and it's a thing that he's very proud of.
Yeah.
But at the time, he acknowledges that he hated it and he didn't really want to do it. But it was that, you know, the short-term pain for long-term gain, right?
Yeah.
So he's started doing that with his son, and his son wanted to play guitar, and he's forced him into doing that. I say forced him. He's not actually, you know,
he's not standing over him.
Exactly. Yeah. But he's booked him lessons and going, I expect you to do this. And his son was similarly reluctant, but just had a breakthrough now. His son loves it, and he says he's really grateful for his dad insisting he does it, right?
There we go.
That sounds wonderful. That is never going to happen with my kids. And I presume with yours. I don't know. Is that the same?
Yeah, no, we tried, to be fair, with musical. Again, with my daughter, she was like, I want to do the guitar. We tried the guitar for a bit, but it was all led by her. Like,
But led
and
by
then
her,
and
yeah,
then
that's the thing, isn't it?
and then now she's learning drums.
Okay.
And but then even this morning, actually, she was like, "I want to learn bass guitar," and I'm like, "Wait, just get and keyboard as well." And she just like she just wants the new. Oh, I'm bored with that. I'm bored with that. My son. We did think that maybe piano might be something with music and maths. He's very logical and all of that. That might be something that would be good. He did try out a couple of lessons with someone. Again, I was there. I was present. It was, someone we know.
But did
and
he
knows.
lead that again?
But yeah, at the time he wanted to, but then now he hasn't. So we haven't forced him.
Right.
So,
but could you possibly imagine sort of looming over them and going, "You've got to do this"?
No, I wouldn't. That's not my style. No.
But it's because it just wouldn't work. I can't I think there's that shift that happens in the in the parenting when you have a neurodivergent child. It's certainly a shift that I made. Was understanding that my expectations for my kids are irrelevant.
Yeah.
You've got to ditch them because they're not, because you're setting expectations that they're not able to meet. So therefore you pretty soon, I think, and probably longer for some than others, but you realize that they've got to lead the way. They've got to show you where they're at and what they want to do, and you sort of follow them.
Yeah.
So it was very strange to have that conversation with my friend about him going, "This is what I expect you to do, and you're going to do it." And then they do it, and then they're grateful. I blew my mind.
I think that shift, it took my husband longer to shift from that, because that's that's more of the typical traditional parenting. Like exactly. you do this,
you
and
lead.
Exactly. But you have to shift. You can't, it does take time to shift that parenting style, but it's got to be done. Otherwise you're going to have more meltdowns, more dysregulation, more stress if you don't do it this way around.
What I might do is actually just tell Jay that I want him to learn piano, and then record what his response would
See
be.
what he says. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I know the gist of what he's going to say. It's a hard no. He just wouldn't do it, and that's partly PDA as well. He would say no. India would also it would be a hard no. Again, PDA, and Otto I think would just be hugely anxious and probably have a bit of a meltdown on that front as well. So it's not anything we need to expose them to, is it?
No. And I think that's the thing, the shift from like compliance to connection, because if you're parenting a neurodivergent child, or any child, this is beneficial for any child, to be honest, but like, it's like, actually, what do they connect with? What are the ways that you as a parent can connect with them through hobbies that you can have shared? Yes, I don't like playing the Nintendo Switch, etc., but that's not one of my deep interests. However, I will be like, "Oh, how do you do this?" or "What do you do this?" Watching,
and that's where you meet them.
And that's where you meet them, because he's trying to explain like what he's doing. Oh, look, I'm jumping, and I'm like, "Oh, how do you jump? Oh, which is it, A or B?" Like, I'm trying to connect with what he likes to do and what my daughter likes to do, because I want to meet them where they're at. Like you said.
That is so true of having neurodivergent kids. They lead and you follow, and you meet them where they're at. And that's like, I fortunately love playing the Switch with,
there we go. Perfect.
with my kids. So that's pretty good. And also, Jay is very into kind of anime series and things, and Japanese movies and that kind of thing. So I've sort of met him there, and it's become this real shared passion of ours now. And
nice.
Every night when the other two have gone to bed, we will sit and watch like an hour of anime, and it's really lovely.
I love
but
that.
again, if I'd have sat him down and said, "Come and do this." Lisa Lloyd had a thing. Do you know Lisa? She had something on Instagram really recently about interacting with neurotypical kids.
Oh, yes, that was so funny.
And the child said, "Oh, like I want to watch like Britain's Got Talent or whatever." It's like, you want to watch what I want to watch. It's like, I've never had that with our kids. Again, you have to. It's the same thing, isn't it? You have to go and meet them where they're at.
We my son, he loves watching similar things on repeat and stuff like that. And it's Grizzly and the Lemmings is basically like
it's good. It's
good.
Yeah.
Oh, you know it. There we go.
Good.
But I'm literally, but it's like Tom and Jerry. I feel like, but like reworked, because the lemmings always get Grizzly. But like, I'm there and I'm like, oh, I find in my head I'm like, I do not this is not really that interesting for me as a program.
Yes,
However, what I love, he's there, super excited, stimming away, like the joy in his face. Like it's amazing. I literally love it. So I'm like, okay, like I need to do
you get
this.
a thing as well, right? Because I do this when I'm watching something with Jay and he likes it, and he really wants me to like it.
Yeah.
He doesn't watch the
Yeah,
TV.
he
He
looks
watches
at
me.
Yeah, he's like, "Are you looking, Mum? Are you looking?" Like he literally, and I'm like, "Yeah." And now I'm looking at you because you're looking at me, and then he's telling me off for not looking.
Yeah. But that's such a sign of that shared connection. Like they want you to meet them. They want you to enjoy it as much as they do.
Yeah.
It's not really for them. This is,
they're trying to
join them in their
connect.
special interest,
Yeah.
right? It's that connection.
Yeah.
Is that they want to see that you're enjoying it as much as they enjoy it, and that's really special. It's lovely when Jay does that. It's like, yeah. Something that you alluded to earlier, and it is hard to hear from parents of neurotypicals, is when they moan about their kids doing too many things. And I get it quite a lot now, because my kids are at that age. I think it's around about the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that sort of age.
Yeah.
So where they're sort of able to do more stuff, but they're not independent enough to go do stuff on their own.
Yeah, they still need a taxi.
Yeah, they need a taxi.
Mum taxi or dad taxi.
Yes, and they need you to facilitate things. So you constantly get them going, well, I had to take him to tennis and judo and, all dressage or all of these just ridiculous things. And they moan about it. And I get it. It's frustrating for them to a degree, but it is hard, I think, for me to not feel a bit of resentment there.
Yeah, and it's understandable, isn't it? Because it's like, I wish that, he would be able to access anything that he wants to do. But in reality, that's not the case. So, I think when you parent neurodivergent kids, and like you said before, our expectations have to be adjusted, our parenting has to be adjusted from what we potentially thought before we had kids, and all of those expectations, there comes with some kind of grief moments where you're like, oh, I'm really sad that I thought this was going to be the case, and now this is the case, but then and it takes a bit of adjustment, doesn't it? And when people are saying things like that, like, oh, I had to do this. Yeah. You're like, oh.
And they're not, because they don't understand.
No, exactly.
They're not saying it, it's not out of malice. They're not trying to annoy you or to make you feel resentful. They just don't understand how that can be perceived by someone who isn't able to do that.
Yeah.
And because it's not just that we want our kids, as we said earlier, to have the experiences that we have and the richness of experiencing the world that we had, but also from a parental point of view, it sort of reduces our own social circle.
Oh,
which
definitely.
Is, I think, definitely a factor for me. It's like, I'm not meeting that many other people.
No.
Whereas, my parents got on with other parents when we went and played football. You got a whole team full of parents there, and you will stand on the sidelines, or you'll chat with people or whatever. Yeah, and you bond in that way, and your kids become friends, and that spawns its own sort of social circle, and we don't have access to that. And that's where a bit of resentment comes in, I think.
And it's so sad. Like, I have different experiences with my son and my daughter. So for example, my son, I don't really know that many parents, because he doesn't get invited to the parties and stuff like that. So I feel so sad about that. And then it got even more amplified when my daughter started school, and she gets invited, and we get we basically at half terms or things like that, we go to meet with her friends. And my son comes along with us. With those, because I do have a circle of friends in her year group, and I do have that. And then sometimes, my son is like, why aren't I going to parties, or why can't we see my friends? And things like that. And it's that comparison there. He's starting to realise that. And that makes me really sad, because I see the differences. And I think if I only had the experience of, for example, with my daughter and that social circle and all of those things, it would be so different. I wouldn't understand it. I wouldn't necessarily get it. how my experience was first of
Yeah,
all
yeah.
with my son, and the social circle that is lacking apart from like
Yeah.
one friend, in that.
And you might find yourself moaning about it to someone
Yeah.
one day in that position.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to look at is, because I think it's clear that access to hobbies is a different thing for neurodivergent kids.
Yeah.
And I wanted to really unpick why that might be. What are the barriers in place? I think one of them is social interaction, because for my kids, certainly, being sociable does not come naturally to them in a neurotypical sense.
Yeah.
They're sociable in a neurodivergent sense, so they want to share their special interest and sort of talk about something in extreme detail. Info dumping. That's sociable to them.
Yeah.
But in the way that neurotypicals experience sociability, they're not really aligned, I guess. And that is the thing I think around hobbies, is that they're not just activity related, because they exist to be social.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because my son, he wants to, like, he loves people. So like he wants to be friends with people and all of that, but sometimes you see that, like, because of the way the language processing, he's more of a guess language processor and will pick up in chunks and quote and do all of those things and then info dump,
Right.
about things like maths. Like, he loves doing sums for everyone, and like I'm like, wow, my math skills have improved since having him. But so he's like, oh, what's so in 17 times 16, mummy, and I'm like, okay. But if he goes, so he will open sometimes with those kind of things, and some kids aren't interested in that. And then,
I mean, I would venture to say that most kids aren't interested.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, I mean, it's a challenging opener, isn't it? At any party.
Yeah. So then socially, it's like, how do you connect? And it's hard.
Yes, because again, those kids are there for that connection as well. That's what they're looking for
definitely.
in these shared events, no matter what it is. And Jay had a particular issue with this kind of thing. Drama was one of them, where he did drama, and that is a very sociable activity. You do drama games, and he enjoyed that, but I think he struggled then outside of that. I remember that he was doing a play, and we had to do a dress rehearsal, and there was a lot of waiting around, and he just couldn't cope with that. And whereas the other kids would chat and just kind of get on while they were waiting for things to happen, he was there for this play, and this play is not happening, so therefore he was getting really fizzy, and and I was there with him all through the day, and I'm having to occupy him, but he really struggled with that.
That unstructured time sometimes, like, in clubs and waiting and all of that. You're like,
waiting,
what do you do?
Parkour was the other one, right? Because we did indoor parkour for a few sessions, because that is right up his street. He's very physical. He's very, he likes leaping about, and he's, quite athletic. So we thought, this is perfect. But he would be waiting for other people to go on, to do their thing, because they'd do a circuit and you have to wait for them to go. And he got so frustrated because they were not as quick as him, or certainly not as quick as he thought he was. Sometimes it's about perception.
True.
And so then he'd be annoyed at that, and he'd be rude to people, and then there would be a bit of friction there, and it was just wasn't worth it. He'd come out more frustrated than he went in, and that's not the point, right?
No, not at all. And if some people, so my son, like I said, is a rule follower, so if people don't follow the rules, then that causes then friction. I mean, even at traffic lights, if someone crosses in front when it's not a green man, he'll be like, oh, silly man. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I agree, that man shouldn't have crossed over. But you probably, saying that out loud to someone may be not the best plan.
Yeah.
But that's what he'll do, if someone's not following those rules, then he'll say it. And that will get, especially socially, that's, oh, no, you can't tell on someone else, all of those kind of social rules.
Yes.
Like that.
And I think those sort of changes to rules and things not going to plan as well
change
become quite a barrier to my kids being able to cope. Again, especially with Jay.
Yeah.
Like, for example, he used to we got him into Dungeons and Dragons,
Oh yeah.
which was great because he's very imaginative and he likes that kind of fantasy world stuff. And he used to go regularly on a Friday to this Dungeons and Dragons section. It's very neurodivergent friendly. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
But you have a dungeon master who basically then does, it's essentially a story, right?
Yes.
And he manages the rules around that. And he really liked that. And then his dungeon master left.
Oh.
And a new dungeon master came in. It was like, nah, I'm done now. New guy, I'm sure, was just as good. But something changed.
Yeah.
Something wasn't as he'd expected it. And once that happens, it's dead. He's just burned it. Like it's dead to him.
He's moved
and
on.
That was, and that's really frustrating, as you're saying with your daughter, right?
Yeah.
Sort of cycles through things and then goes, right, nah, done with that, done with that, done with that. Are you sure she's not?
Well, yeah,
she's not neurodivergent.
Well, no, I think she probably is, but
okay, yeah, I'm gonna say,
that's why I said she's a bit like my brain, my ADHD
right?
brain.
Okay,
more so than the
ADHD
autistic,
thing.
But we'll see.
Yeah, it was because there is definitely like cycling through things, and then if they don't go to plan, they're gone forever. Yeah, and again, with Jay, I tried to get him into online stuff because that's quite a potentially rich vein of stuff.
Less social, kind of awkwardness. Yeah.
And I've talked to other guests who have sort of said that there's that their kids take part in online stuff, and that's been really nice because you chat via text or whatever. And I found an online Minecraft club, and he's really into Minecraft, so it's like great. And so I spent ages firstly finding out about it and researching it, and then because Jay's PDA, sort of just dropping it there,
dropping the hints,
dropping the suggestion there, and going, oh, this thing's on, this might be quite interesting. And eventually he agreed that he was going to try it out. So then I had to have a Zoom call with the organizer to prove that I'm, who I say I am, and I'm not some kind of nefarious being trying to access Minecraft Club, which is fine. So I had to have that with Jay. So that's another hurdle I had to do. Then I had to set access to a private server so that we could get in there with Jay. And it's like, great, we're in, right? That's taken weeks.
Wow.
Like from first suggestion to get to the point that I'm there. And then the first call happened, and I was like, great, okay, this is it, Jay, this is your time, we're going to set it up. And on the day of the call, for whatever reason, there was a technical issue and I couldn't get in. And I'm now panicking because I know that if I can't get in, Jay is going to abandon that forever. He's never going to come back. So I'm stressing, and he is by the side of me getting really cross. And I can feel the tension rising in him, and he's starting to mutter and swear. And we're on a Zoom call, so I'm trying to sort of like, his introduction to the group of people is him being really frustrated and sweary. So I'm trying to smooth that over and trying to resolve the issue. And he just then blew up and ran upstairs, and that was it. And I knew at that point I was done. And just one thing not going to plan, and that was a whole thing I'd set my mind, set my heart on him being able to do. Never going to be able to go back now because of that one experience.
And those one experiences, that change, that not going as it can, the unpredictability of things, that can really just absolutely derail an experience for sure. And people don't, it's like sometimes you feel like as a parent, like you're just trying to, make sure everything's okay, like you're giving them, but sometimes people don't, that you're talking to, are like, be fine. I'm like, no, but if this happens and then this happens, like literally you need to make sure that this, these are the adaptations, or these are the things that are needed to make sure that he can access it or feel safe, and therefore not dysregulated and all of this. And until people see it, sometimes they don't necessarily believe, they just think you're being an overprotective parent.
Exactly. You're being really picky or something. And they don't understand. It's like, guys, we've got one shot at this. If we get it wrong, you will never see us again. And I'm not like, this isn't diva behavior. This is just cold hard facts.
It's real.
It's very real. One of the other issues, I think, with our kids engaging with hobbies is environmental restrictions. When you go to something and, as you say, because people won't understand, for example, what the impact of something being too noisy will have on our kids, or too bright, or too busy. And sometimes, my kids will turn up to something and take one look and be like, no, I can't, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And again, it's not them being divas. They
No.
just understand it's pattern recognition in them, right? They
Yeah.
know I've been here before and I've been overwhelmed and I probably
Yeah.
can't articulate why, but this is not for me.
Yeah. The sensory environment is so key, and I'm very passionate about the sensory with the super sensory squad, with the penguins, helping kids understand their sensory systems. And in all my training, I'm like, actually understanding that, the lights, the noise, all of those things play such a massive role in dysregulation of the nervous system, and therefore then leading to some of those behaviours that challenge that you might see, or the freeze, or whatever. We as a society, and as if you don't have neurodivergent kids and you don't experience those sensory triggers yourself as a neurodivergent individual or whatever, then you don't necessarily fully get that that's so important, the environment. Like one of my favorite quotes is, if a flower doesn't grow, then you don't blame the flower, you fix the environment. And that I use in my training for the Friendly Send Advisor. In that framework, I literally had about 50 activity providers at the weekend with some soil and pots and seeds, just showcasing and being like, actually, what's the water, what's the sun, what's the soil in your environment that you're creating for these children, and how can you adapt it so that they can bloom and thrive? Because I think it's so important, that environment, whether that's the actual physical environment, but also the culture of a space, of your organization, of whatever, is so important. And that mindset, seeing everything, every behavior through a kind of sensory lens as well, and seeing and thinking, oh, what are they seeking? What are they avoiding? And how can I help to make sure that they have things that can help regulate their nervous system?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time that is dependent on us advocating for them. And because, as we discussed earlier, people can't be expected to make accommodations for every different profile. They wouldn't know how. And, I'm still learning about the profiles of my own kids and what they need. So you can't expect a sort of blanket rule, but having a dialogue with them and going, okay, here's what we need. And I think, like going back to the gymnastics with Jay, if I'd have understood a little bit more about it, I'd have been in a much better position to be able to advocate for him and go, here's what he needs. When he's like this, see that face he's got on now, right? That means he just needs to step out of the activity, go and sit down, maybe find him a ball to bounce on, like those giant balls. Whatever it is, you can help to allow other people to give him accommodations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing. That's what I say to people. It's asking, not assuming. Like, it's asking about the specific child, asking the parent, have that collaboration. Because especially for neurodivergent kids, hobbies and activities, going to actual clubs, for example, is only going to work if there's collaboration between the activity leader and the parents and the child. Like, it all has to be all that preparation, like you did for the Minecraft thing. You had to, make sure all that preparation beforehand. And that's what some people don't see. They don't see the pre-prep. They don't see the weeks of you dropping hints and not placing a demand, but, like just dropping, oh, wouldn't this be nice? Oh, maybe, oh, look at this.
And then that one
and
moment,
then,
it's
all gone.
Goes to shit again.
Yeah, gone.
There was one with Otto as well. So you were talking about, your son doing tennis, and Otto is he's really into sport. Sport as a hobby for him is amazing, because it's the only time that I know he gets out of his head. Right? It's a physical thing. It's so good for him. When he plays football, it's really interesting. When, like, if he's not doing sport, if he knocks himself, he walks into a chair or something, he gets very overwhelmed and really upset really quickly. Okay. If he's playing football and he's not in his own head, he could get a ball full in the face and be absolutely fine with it. He'll dust himself down and he'll get up. It's really interesting how the physical activity bypasses some of the anxiety that he has. And tennis has been really good for him, because we've got a special disability tennis group, which I'm going to talk about later, that he went to. But the problem was he was too good. So he was getting frustrated at other people because he's actually quite good at sport. So we were like, well, not a problem. Why don't we try the non-disabled
Yeah.
version of this? Because you know the coach, right? And you know the court,
Yes.
you know, so it's
True.
exactly the same, just different people.
Yeah.
And you know, like a higher quality opposition, if you like. Not that he's in it for the competition, but he just
Yeah.
get more enjoyment when it's more of a kind of reciprocal thing.
Yeah.
So we tried him at it, and I took him, and he didn't even get to the court when I saw him tense up, because he saw the people and he saw the number of people, and his anxiety just went through the roof. So he couldn't access that. And I sort of shepherded him in and I encouraged him to take part. But when it all started, he just I just saw panic and fear and anxiety in his eyes. And I was like, shall we go? And he was like, yes, please. And he just couldn't access it because of that unknown, right? Just too many people.
Too many people. Yeah.
We wouldn't have known until we turned up what it looked like.
No.
But it's that barrier to being able to do something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's for many people, you know, if you explained, well, why? He knows the court, he knows all of these things. You know, a lot of people wouldn't really think about that, but it's a big thing. It's still change, and a lot of people is really hard.
Yeah, and it's this it's just the unknown factor. He didn't know until he turned up. He looked at it and went, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And it's similar with football as well. Another kind of thing about anxiety with Otto is that, again, loves sport, absolutely loves playing sport. That is a legitimate hobby.
Yeah.
However, as soon as anything becomes competitive, he freaks out. Like, he can't do it. So we will be playing table tennis at home, right? We've got this little net that we stick on the kitchen table, and it's like it's lovely and it's really fun, and we're just pinging it back and forwards and having a chat. As soon as if anyone suggests, hey, why don't we start scoring, he just loses it. He can't do it, and he gets really, really anxious and gets overwhelmed and dysregulated. So it's important to not have that. However, any sport that our kids do as a hobby at some point becomes competitive.
Yeah.
They organise a game where you know, at
win or
football,
lose,
win or lose, or you say, right, let's join a league. I mean, that's his worst nightmare.
Yes, my son, with competitiveness, that's when you're gonna see that. And at one point, you know, he was given like one life because he was better than other people, and other people had given two, and I was like, oh, this is the injustice of this. You know, I was like, he was gonna, because why do I get one? But he wouldn't necessarily, even if he said, oh, because you're better than the other people or whatever.
We're trying to even it up.
But it's like, well, it's unfair. So then it came, and I could see him bubbling, but he was there. I was like, okay, we'll see. But then he hit it, and I was like, please don't miss it, please don't miss it, please don't, because I was like, if he misses it and he's only got one life, like, that's it. But fortunately, he hit it over the net, and I was like, oh, okay, phew, he hasn't gone out, because if that had gone slightly differently and he had only had one life, bam.
It would have been,
because the sense of justice that is unfair, like, in his head, which I can understand why, because he wasn't explained. Oh, it's because, you know, you're better than other people, etc. So you only need one life.
Yeah,
you know.
And that's the thing with our kids. I think is that, like, Otto is close to being able to do a thing that I would quite like him to do.
Yeah.
Because I grew up playing football, right? And going to football every Sunday.
Yeah.
And I always just like, I've basically ruled out the fact that my kids are going to do that. But Otto is actually really good at football, right? And his teacher said, we want him to try out for the school team.
Oh, wow.
Because he's really good.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's not going to happen. I don't like even mentioning it to him. I know is going to cause him anxiety.
Oh, bless.
So he can't do it. He's just that barrier away from being able to participate in a hobby.
Yeah.
That would be good for me as well.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, so I sort of very casually mentioned it to him, and he was like, no. He's, you know, you see him shaking his head really rapidly and his eyes going big. It's like, I'm never going to mention this again. Just wanted to check. Another barrier to kids taking part in hobbies, I think this one specifically applies to Jay. Have you heard of the Caesar or nothing complex?
No.
Right.
Tell me.
So I found this. So Pierre Novelli has written a book called Why Can't I Just Enjoy Things? And I read it, or I listened to it recently, and it's brilliant. So he's autistic, and he talks about things from an autistic perspective. And he mentions this in this book, that he's got a very Caesar or nothing approach to things, which is basically, if I try something, if I'm not immediately quite good at it, then I am not interested.
Yeah.
Right? He will just abandon it. It's like either this is going to result in supreme triumph or it's going to end in total obscurity. There is no in between. There is no learning curve. And it's very much like that with Jay, that he approaches things with supreme confidence. He expects to be good at something immediately. And if he's not, or crucially, if someone is immediately better than him, is done. Like, that's it. It's never going to do that again. That's like... everything that you do has a learning curve, right?
Yeah. I mean, some people have a specific, like they might randomly be amazing at one thing maybe, but like, most of us, the majority of us, have to learn and get things wrong, make mistakes, all of that. Like, we tried to get a book because my son finds it tricky with competitive, like Otto and and all of this, and wants to, but also does want to be the best, like Jay, and finds it frustrating when not. We got the book. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, and so we've been trying for a number of years. Just read the book, like, and then sometimes I do say, like, remember, sometimes you win, and he's like, sometimes you learn. I'm like, yeah, like, as in, like, and if he's feeling angry or whatever, sometimes you lose. I'm like, yeah,
you do.
But it's like trying to just be like, you're not going to be the best at everything. It's hard though to try and, it must be hard with Jay to try and get him to understand that. Like.
I think it's, I think that it is. I think to a degree it's anxiety, isn't it? It's triggering anxiety around not being good, not being good enough, I guess. Yeah. But I'd never heard of it kind of referred to as a Caesar or nothing thing, and I quite like that idea because it definitely explains Jay's approach to things. Yeah. Otto is similar, but not in terms of him expecting to be good. It's his opposite. He expects to be shit at something, so he won't even try. Aww. So he'll look at something and go, no, there's no way. Because again, it's that fear of failure, right? Yeah. It's the fear of not being good enough. So rather than trying it, working out he's not good enough and then binning it forever, he just won't even try it. Yeah. That entry to a new hobby there's a barrier before they even get there, and that's tricky. Yeah,
and what makes me sad is that a lot of these things where kids feel like they're not good enough or all of those things, it's past experiences of, say, the education system or whatever, because sometimes there are more barriers. It is harder to access certain things, but then it's not them, it's the society barriers that are stopping them, but that makes them feel like, oh, I'm not good at that, I'm rubbish at that, and all of that, and builds up that anxiety. But if we removed those barriers, in society, changed the systems and did all of those things, then these kids wouldn't be feeling like it was them, because it's not them.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes just being transparent about that to them as well, to contextualize it for them, say, look, like, you get overwhelmed by too many people, but you're here and you gave it a go, and that is huge. None of these people here have had to go through that, so there's a victory. I mean, they won't see it as that, but it just at least articulating that, framing, and helping them to understand that success is relative.
And like those wins, like I'm always like celebrating those little wins. Like, for example, I'm so happy that he goes to tennis now. Like, I'm like, wow, we found something. That's a massive win. Even though, people in his year group, they may have started going in reception and now he's in year 4, or people may be going to so many different things. It doesn't matter. Like, for him, like, I'm like, that's a win.
Yeah, that's
like
a huge
massive
win. One of the things I've been thinking about in terms of adopting hobbies is whether there is an issue of our neurodivergent kids' tendency towards monotropism. Right. So in terms of like a deep dive into a specific thing, rather than a broader interest in lots of different things, it's those special interests, right? Because I think hobbies, by their very definition, are part-time. right? There's something that you do for fun occasionally, but maybe once or twice a week. Yeah. But with neurodivergence, that's not enough. It's nothing. It's part-time. I'm either fully in this or I'm not interested at all. Certainly with my lot.
Well,
it's either
yeah, it
special
depends.
interest or no interest.
Yeah, absolutely. It does depend on their brain, and so for some, for sure, monotropism will be playing a part there, definitely.
Yeah, because it's certainly with Jay, if he's interested in it, he's all in.
Yeah.
You can't restrict that to just taking part on a Wednesday between 6 and 7:30 and then it's off again until the next time. He wants to do it obsessively.
Yeah.
Like games or, something like that. So I think maybe that's a barrier. Sometimes is the way that they choose to engage with a hobby might not be interesting enough for them because it's not deep enough.
Yeah, so if they've got that type of brain, then absolutely, because they want a deep dive and they need to get pushed to, well, not pushed, but as in they need to get that engagement more because they already probably know certain things about, that other people, they would be learning things, about that deep interest. But yeah, I think it depends because for some, they've definitely haven't got that, my more ADHD, for example, brain potentially. It's not monotropism. It's often they're kind of here, there, and everywhere, etc.
But when you've got an ADHD brain,
there's a mix. True.
Who knows which one's going to turn up, and that is, that's similar with Jay.
Yeah, absolutely.
God, it's just a whirlwind in his brain.
Oh, it must be. Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things is if you find a hobby for them and it's a drop-off, that is like a next level of anxiety as a parent.
Yeah.
of dropping them off and then walking away and just hoping that everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
As you kind of alluded to. So a lot of the time we have to be there.
Yeah.
I'm there with tennis with Otto, but that's only about an hour, and very often I end up playing with him anyway, so that's fine. But there are some things that they go, no, you just drop them off. I'm like, are you sure? I mean, I know how this is likely to go. Do you have any things that you can drop your son off at all?
So just the church youth group. That's the only thing. Tennis, I'm there. But because he's there a few days a week in that church building and like with the same people
and
the kids,
them, as you were saying
and I trust
earlier.
them. So that's the only thing. Whereas actually, I haven't dropped him off and left him anywhere else.
Because we've done that a few times, and very often you get a phone call.
Yeah.
The worst example of this was Tam had to deal with this year, and this was, I think, in half term, and Tam had managed to find a stop motion animation workshop
Sounds interesting.
for neurodivergent kids, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And they'd done it maybe a year ago, something like that, and they all enjoyed it. So Tam had found that unicorn of activities, one that all of our kids could do at each different age range, that they'd done, that they'd enjoyed, and that they said they were up for doing again. Like that, I mean, hats off to Tam for finding it. Fantastic. And it was about a half an hour drive away from our house, but do you know what? It's worth it. So Tam had been looking after them during half term. And obviously, as a parent, you're working during the day, having a hobby that you could drop them off at and you can go and do shit for yourself is golden. And Tam was not like going to the movies or having a leisurely lunch. Tam had a hospital appointment and an optician's appointment to cram in while they were otherwise occupied. So it's like, great, drop them off, go and do, drive half an hour back to Brighton, do what I need to do, and then I'll go pick them up, right? That was the plan. Did it go to plan?
No,
it didn't. So obviously you've got the, setting the scene for them to go initially, and you've got to build them up to that. And even though they've been there before, you've got to get them on board. But I think partly it was sort of getting Jay's buy-in, because Jay, as a PDA, needs the novelty. He's done it before, but he did say he'd give it a go. But you also need to put those sort of emergency plans in place. If you don't like it, here's a bunch of books you can read. Just go sit in a corner and read those books.
Yeah.
Because mummy needs to go and do
the jobs,
do stuff for
Yeah.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
So everything was set up, and dropped them off, and then started driving back. After about an hour and a bit, they called Tam to say, you're going to need to pick Jay up because he's being really rude. And it's like, oh, now bearing in mind, these are familiar with neurodivergency, right? They're set up to handle neurodivergent kids. So if Jay's behavior is becoming an issue, he's like overwhelmed.
Yeah.
He's gone over the edge, right?
Yeah.
And apparently they tried to sort of go, well, you don't want to do the activity, so why don't you go help out in the kitchen? Because we're making lunch and we're making pizzas and you like cooking, right?
Yeah.
Apparently he was really rude to the chef. Like, you know, because that's his fight. You know, that if he's dysregulated or he's overwhelmed, that's how it manifests itself. And it's, you know, for any adult that is not related to him. That's a lot to deal with. That's a lot. You know, I'm doing this for you guys. Come on, give me a break. My pizza's not that bad. Come on. Like, I'm a trained chef and you're giving me notes on how to make fucking pizza. So Tam basically went on the phone and said, could you just maybe just not be rude? And he's like, no, can't do that. So Tam had to leave the hospital appointment halfway through, drive all the way to the event, pick him up, at which point Tam, being there, gave Otto a get out clause, because he was enjoying it, and if Tam hadn't been there he probably would have put up with it. But he's like, no, I want to go as well. India wanted to stay still, so now Tam has to take two of those, drive them back, entertain them for a little bit until they're ready to pick India up. So ended up doing a journey backwards and forwards 4 times. Didn't get to the hospital appointment. Didn't do the optician's appointment. And this is a day in the life of just trying to get our kids to do a hobby that for neurotypical families would be like, drop them off, go have mimosas, have a bit of a shop, go to the doctors, go pick them up, job's done.
Yeah, that's, you know, way more complex, isn't it?
It's just a day in the life.
Yeah, it's all those, and like you said, it's the mental load beforehand. It's also that day where it's like 4 hours in the car or whatever, back and forth, you know. And then it's also dealing with, if things don't go so well, it's dealing with the dysregulation at home as well afterwards, or if they've masked, or if, you know, something's triggered them, all of that too. So you know, it's a lot.
And the disappointment of thinking you'd found something that would work. Because it's not easy. And you find something and go, oh, this is going to work. And then you get their buy-in. It's like, oh, hello. Never get your hopes up, basically, I think is the key to that. So what does work for our neurodifferent kids? Because there are some things that do actually work. And I think predominantly it's where they're neurodivergent kids meeting together. That definitely works. So you sometimes can get those clubs which are neurodivergent meetups, and that's quite nice, because Jay used to go to one of these regularly, which was run by one of our esteemed guests at Neuroshambles, Joe Matthews. He's amazing, and that's how we know Joe, through that. And that was lovely, because it was just a bunch of neuro-exceptional kids just existing in the same space together, and the societal aspect of that wasn't jarring, because they're not operating by unwritten rules that neurotypicals would. But so finding those kind of meetups is not easy. But if you can get those, they're kind of golden. And the people that run those, you've got to be pretty strong to run those. So Joe, who runs the one that we have near us, is incredible at creating this environment where there are guidelines rather than rules, and you know, and it is not offended by rudeness or difficult behavior, because they understand it. And it takes a special kind of person to do that, and to want to do that for other kids, because her kids are older now and not doing that. So the fact that she's doing it for other kids, and she's getting joy from other kids, and understands the impact and the importance that it has for other families, is amazing.
And I was actually speaking to someone recently, and they are an autistic young adult, and they go to a youth club that is, for neurodivergent teenagers, etc., that kind of age range. And he was saying that, he has to, suppress his stims all the time when he's out in society, apart from at this club where he can literally do it and he can be himself. He can, stim with his hands, and he, because actually it's really painful. Like when he gets home and he's have to mask these stims all day, his arms are literally like so painful and so hurting because he's stopping himself, for example.
That tension.
Yeah, there's so much tension in his arms. And I'm like, I just want society to be less judgy, so that then everyone can openly stim if they want to, and just not have to deal with all of that pain in your arms after a day of not stimming. So safe spaces for kids, for young adults, for everyone, where they can fully be themselves. It's like so important. Like that's why I'm super passionate about it, because it needs to happen.
Yeah, but that's the importance, I think, of neurodivergence being among neurodivergents, and there's that you haven't got that judgment. So that does work in terms of hobbies. Just finding them is the tricky thing, and I guess look on your local autism support Facebook groups, or just ask around for other parents of neurodivergence, or start something up if you've got the capacity. Not many parents of neurodivergence have that capacity, I'll be honest, but those that do, amazing.
And but I'm also like, I definitely think that specific things like that, safe spaces, but I'm also really trying to educate all providers that have a mix of neurotypical, neurodivergent kids, because I'm like, it's so important, because if we don't try and share that understanding that we know from the lived experiences, like to others that don't get it or don't have that lived experience of either being a parent of a child or like themselves, then the society's not going to change. So I think it's also, I've worked with some providers that I'm like, actually I would be able to send my son to that that provider, because I know that now they look at behavior not in that judgy way. They look at it as how can I support them. And I think yes, it is hard. It's like teaching, like running activities, etc., with 30 kids in front of you, or 20 or 15 or whatever, and balancing those needs. But I think it can be done. And I think understanding those individual children, I think that's part of the role, to be able to chat with parents, to be able to chat with the kid, to think about how can we support. And it won't work for everyone, but for a lot of kids, there can be that integration.
And that'll give them that access. It will give those parents that relief.
Exactly. Yeah.
That respite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hopefully be good for everyone.
Definitely.
It's not all rubbish.
Okay, we're going to look at the positives now. One of them, actually, conversely, I was sort of talking about parents of neurotypical kids moaning about having to ferry their kids around all the time. We don't have that. There is that, I guess. Like, if my kids all had loads of hobbies and I had to taxi them around to and from different activities, you almost certainly would not be listening to Neuroshambles now. Right?
Yeah, you'd have three. You've got three kids with three different
I just
clubs.
I wouldn't have time.
No.
To be fair, they also probably wouldn't be neurodivergent, so I'd have nothing to say. It'd just be me gloating about how neurotypical my kids are. Do you know what I absolutely don't have an issue with? Food. My lot, I'll eat anything. Just me banging on about that. That would be a shit podcast. No one wants that.
No.
So that is a positive. Neuroshambles exists because my kids don't have hobbies. If they start having hobbies, you'll notice maybe
You'll
one
finish.
a month. Yeah, that's it. I'm done.
I
Have
think.
you got any positives?
Yeah, I think it helps us. We have more like family time.
Yeah,
Like the kids love, being together as a family. They, and we can slow down and reevaluate things like I like coming back. Obviously, my son goes upstairs, usually have a little kind of cuddle of his thing and like a little rest. And then we have our snacks, we have our regulation stuff that I know is going to help them regulate to like kind of transition. Because otherwise, if I was going to be like demand, then
Yes.
it would be like, it would not go well. So we have our regulation time. Yes, I am like lax on things like reading and spelling because I'm like, actually that's more demands right then. And
Yes.
my key thing after school is regulation. It's like, how can I help that transition? I know that my son's exhausted. What can we do that's fun? Like we might play bird bingo or like a little game, like something that he and my daughter like to do, just the three of us there, and different things like that. We might do some sums. That's what makes that.
that's your son's idea.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely. It's like,
not
let's
yours.
test. He makes a little test for me, and like, and
bless
all
him.
of that. So so you can do what they actually want to do rather than,
Yeah.
and you don't have to rush. You don't have to. It can be more chilled, and then that lessens that stress, I think. So
Yeah, that is-
rather
yeah.
than running all over the place, we actually can just have some time. And sometimes, I'm like, and then we have, they have some screen time as well while I'm making tea. It's all, we have a certain routine basically every day after school. We have a certain routine, and that works for us.
That's a really valid point, actually.
Yeah.
The amount of time that we spend together as a
Yeah,
family
it's more.
is lovely, and the quality of that time, because we're all together,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So a lot of the hobbies, in inverted commas,
Yeah.
are us doing similar things
Yeah.
together in the house, or
Yeah.
but as a family rather than sort of external hobbies. I
Exactly.
guess, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And like you say, it does bring that closeness together.
Yeah. And like them, even though obviously siblings, they get each other, etc. Like it's not smooth sailing, but because they do spend a lot of time together, and don't go to all the different clubs, then that bond, is
Yeah.
great when it works. When
when
one
it
is not winding up the other, then it's
Yeah.
great.
Neurodiversity Champions.
Okay, so Neurodiversity Champions now. This is the section of the podcast where you get to tell me about any organisations or individuals that are doing amazing things in the world of neurodiversity. I guess firstly, before you launch into your nominations, that you could tell us a little bit about what you're doing as the Supersensory Squad is really interesting, but people might not have heard about it.
Yeah. So I, with the Supersensory Squad, we create resources rather than like groups or hobbies, but resources to help with understanding the 8 sensory systems. They're penguin characters, 8 penguin characters.
Nice.
So they link to, and they're penguins because my kids and my co-founder's kids, Kate, they love penguins. So we're like, yeah, let's do 8 penguins. Why not?
Who doesn't love a penguin?
Exactly.
What
Everyone
kind
loves
of
penguin.
monster doesn't love
I
penguins?
know. We thought they're very relatable. But it's just helpful because each of the penguins have a question, like what can you see, what can you hear, touch, smell, taste, the standard 5, but also then the internal sensory systems, interoception, how are you feeling inside, those cues for whether you're hungry, thirsty, what emotions you're feeling, whether you're hot, cold, all of those things link in with interoception. Proprioception, which is like what can you push, pull, and carry? That's flex. She's there holding her weights. That is very good for after school activities. We literally have a lot of heavy work. We have a lot of pushing, pulling, carrying to just help with that regulation, weighted blankets, etc. And then we have Rolly, who is our vestibular movement penguin, and he's got a hula hoop, and stuff like that. So the reason why I wanted to look into sensory regulation is because my son, his seizures are triggered by excitement or anxiety, and some other random bath is sometimes a trigger. But
Bath the city, or
no.
okay, because that would be
having
very
it.
niche.
No, yeah,
Having a bath, yeah.
having a bath can trigger, yeah. But that excitement and that anxiety, they both do this, they dysregulate that nervous system. And so therefore, if I can help him understand what sensory things he seeks to help him, like the proprioception, the weighted blankets, fluffy things, tactile. He's very tactile, loves that. And what triggers him, then we can try and like make sure, like, if he's in a crowded space or what, that's why he just needs to go by himself, to be away from people sometimes, because that helps him regulate. And
that would be super helpful for Otto, actually. Otto doesn't really understand why he feels the way he feels a lot of the time, and he can't really label those kind of things. So I think opening up that conversation would be really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. And we made a book that my son helped with, like a kid's book. The Supersensory Squad saves Buzz's birthday. Buzz is our tactile penguin, and birthday parties are sometimes very dysregulating. So so therefore, Buzz gets a bit dysregulated, and the rest of the squad help him out. And there's a cracked iceberg that my son was like, then the iceberg cracks. So that's in the story.
Nice.
It's dramatic, but
no spoilers.
Sorry. But it's just trying to help kids understand that everyone has different sensory needs, and that's okay. Like, for some people they want the loud noise, for others they don't, and it's relating to those penguins and using them to communicate what you need. So that's been super helpful.
Awesome.
And then through the Friendly Send Advisor, I train activity providers to in neurodiversity, inclusion, like all of that, to help them look at behaviour, through that sensory lens. And
great.
All
right, I'll put a link to both of those in the show notes. And have you got any neurodiversity champions that are not yourself? That was me. Sorry, I wasn't. No, because I'm the one that suggested that. Just to be clear, you weren't just like, I'm insisting on you talking about me. I just thought people would be interested.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's, I'm working with a number of different organisations that put on great things. Like, for example, Boogie Beats do some toddler classes that I'm working with the franchisor to try and help with the inclusive activities, because I've got a CPD accredited course, and so there's a number of people. So if you look at my website, there will be at the end of July a list of my recommendations for inclusive activity providers who have gone through
to hobbies and stuff.
So hobby, that has gone through my training, that I've given them the gold send inclusion mark, which means I would feel happy to send my own child there.
That's
which is
the benchmark.
Which is
exactly,
which is massive. So on my website www.nicolebateman.co.uk, there will then be a list of my gold providers, silver providers. So therefore you can then link up to find some inclusive activities if they're in your area.
Great. Awesome. I've got a neurodiversity champion, which relates to something we were talking about earlier, which is the tennis club that Otto does, because there's a guy called Sam Mills who runs a disability tennis club in Brighton, and it's completely free of charge. So he used to be a coach, like a high level tennis performance coach, where he'd be like, boot camps to get these kids on the professional circuit and all of that kind of thing. And he was traveling around the country a lot, and he was like, I'm not really getting as much out of this as I want to. And then his girlfriend was doing some sort of special needs teaching and that kind of thing, and said, well, why don't you do this? And so he started it a few years ago, and he just got a lot out of it. So he runs regular sessions, which are sort of drop-in, and you turn up and they play tennis, and he runs it, all through the summer as well, like every Sunday. And I just think it's such a wonderful thing to do for him to do. And it's so inclusive, and, Otto loves it. And I think for parents to do that as well, and to get involved, to be able to go and take them to an activity that is low pressure and, kind of easy to access, has been wonderful. So I wanted to give Sam a huge shout out, because it's been really important for Otto, and his self-esteem in particular, I think, has been really, really benefited from doing that and being able to take part.
That's amazing.
So if you are in the Brighton or East Sussex area and you fancy getting involved, not just if you want to take your kids, but also if you fancy joining in as a volunteer, because that's the only way it's going to really work, is if he attracts more people, he's going to need more people to help as well, to grow this into an even bigger, even better facility for our neurodivergent little ones. Then I will put all the details in the show notes, and you can contact him and find out a little bit more about it. That'd be great.
Tiny epic wins.
Right, tiny epic wins now. Always love a tiny epic win. These are the things that for neurotypical families would not be seen as a big deal, really. But for us, we know the real value of these little victories. So have you got any tiny epic wins for us, Nicole?
Well, I mean, I've got a big epic win.
Okay.
Well, with that he actually goes to tennis. He has been at
Yeah.
a tennis club, like linked with hobbies. That's a massive win. It's, he's year 4. He's started a hobby. Like,
Is that his first actual
club.
kind of outside hobby?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that is a huge win.
that's a massive win. So not tiny, but still epic. And a win.
Yeah. I've got a couple of tiny epic wins. These relate to Otto's birthday. It was Otto's birthday recently.
Yeah.
And again, he loves doing sport. And so I was sort of thinking of what we could do to sort of celebrate his birthday, but not feel like a birthday celebration. Because he gets super anxious about being the center of attention.
Okay.
So I talked to him and I was like, why don't we just book a football pitch and get a bunch of your friends to play football? It is definitely not a party, right? There will be no cake.
Yeah.
There will be no cards or presents. No one will sing
No
happy
singing.
birthday. It will just be people turning up and playing football and then just vanishing in afterwards. How do you like that? And he was like, that would be amazing. And he was so excited about it.
Yeah.
So I set up a Facebook group and I told everyone about it. Like, this is specifically not a birthday.
Yeah.
And they were like, should we bring presents? Like, no, absolutely don't bring a present. Just bring yourselves. And we did it. And everyone kind of honored and respected that.
Good.
Everyone just turned up, played football. We had a wicked time.
Yeah.
Otto had the best time. He was so excited about it that he slept in his football kit the night before. And he kept asking about it. Whereas a birthday party for him would be hugely anxiety inducing normally.
Yeah.
But the fact that we did that, we honoured his birthday rather than celebrated it, and that everyone just had a wicked time was like a huge win for us.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, again, for Otto's birthday, is that Jay did a birthday card for him.
Aww.
Now, what we do is that we get the kids to make birthday cards for each other.
Yeah.
And typically with Jay's, I will vet it before he hands it out, because he has been known to be kind of cruel and a little bit mean in his birthday messaging.
Yeah.
But he'd sealed it.
Oh.
And so I didn't know what it was. So I gave it to Otto for his birthday, and I sort of stood over to him. And well, I did ask Jay, is this mean or rude? He was like, no, it's not. I was like, okay, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Because your version of rude and my version of rude are probably quite different. Otto opened it, and the message inside was this. Otto, I know I belittle you a lot, but you're not so lame.
Oh.
Love, Jay. It was like, I mean, like, not so lame is as good as I could possibly have hoped for in that situation. But for him to acknowledge, that was like, genuinely, I got all teary about it, which is weird, isn't it? Because it's less than effusive.
Yeah.
But for him to acknowledge that was a huge thing.
Yeah.
And Otto sort of swelled with pride a little bit at being called
not
so lame.
Oh, that's cute. Like, yeah, I'm like, oh.
I'm taking the win.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to take all the wins, yeah.
What the flip?
Okay, so what the flip moments now. These are moments where your neurodivergent little ones will do or say something that completely blows your mind and leaves you wondering how on earth you're expected to respond to this. I have plenty of what the flip moments that come in. So I've got a couple of them that happened recently. One of them, I went to a car boot sale. And I gave the kids each a budget of £5. I was feeling generous. Think of what you could buy at a car boot sale for £5, right? Jay decided he wanted to buy a rug, right? And I was like, have you asked how much it is? Because it sounds like it's going to be out of budget. And he went off to ask how much it was, and he came back in a fit of rage because it was £20. And I was like, well, you can't buy the rug. But he couldn't shake the fact that that was the thing he wanted, and he couldn't afford it with the budget he had. And I was trying to sort of encourage him, and I was like, look, I know you can't afford the rug, but is there anything else you want? And he just looked at me and went, the sweet release of death.
Oh dear.
It's like, I don't think that's available for sale.
No.
We'll just, let's just buy some tea bags. That's what he bought with it in the end.
Oh, wow.
He just bought £5 worth of tea bags. He didn't even want them. I just think it was just to spend money on. So that was the compromise, basically, rather than the sweet release of death.
Yeah.
The other what the flip moment is a classic PDA experience I have from India, who is really leaning into her PDA profile at the moment. We were on the trampoline messing about, and she leaned into me and she burped in my ear. Right, which is never ideal.
No.
And I went, India, that's horrible. Please don't burp in my ear. And she went, I didn't burp in your ear. I burped on your ear. And it's like, it got me thinking, I mean, technically you are correct. I mean, I'm not going to go into that and go, well, some of the burp probably technically did go in my ear, but where's the threshold of in or on? I don't know. I just sort of shrugged and moved on because there's no point, is there? Okay, so that is it for this episode of Neuroshambles. Firstly, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. If you want to check out Nicole's podcast, it is Conversations with a Send Mum. I will put a link in the show notes to that because she's interviewed some exceptional humans, and I'm sure there's lots more planned, so that's all good. I will also say a big thank you to the listeners for continuing to join me for this nonsense and for recommending it to other people and saying lovely comments in the socials, as they're all very gratefully received. If you want to email me to suggest other topics that you'd like us to cover, or if you want to tell me any of your own What the Flip moments, please feel free to email me at hello@neuroshambles.com, or you can join me on the socials on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, or TikTok. I think that's it. I think we're done. Thank you so much again, Nicole. All that remains for me to say now is have a nice life.